Okay, on air. This is the Citizen Involvement Council July meeting. The Citizen Involvement Council is a coming together of all the neighborhood associations. They send at least at least one representative and up to two to come here and talk about what's going on in their neighborhoods, and then find out what the city is doing and just discuss some of the things that we want to come together on to make our city better. And now the first thing we'll do is have our roll call.
Tony Uzuebunam.
Present.
Mike Berman.
Present.
Paul Edgar.
Here.
Amber Holbeck. Amy Wilhite. I am here. Kathy Hogan.
Here.
Tom O'Brien.
Here.
Steve Anderson.
Here.
Faith Leith.
Here.
Alice Watts.
Here.
Damon Mabey.
Here.
Bob LaSalle.
Here.
Barbara Rankin.
Here.
And welcome our new representative from the Park Place Neighborhood Association, Diane McKnight.
Here.
Eileen Olson.
Here.
Marianne Jensen. Ingrid Rickenbach.
Here.
Todd Last. Brian Boyce. Brian Grant.
And we'd like to acknowledge those people in the audience. Could we just have, starting back there with you, Tony, if you would just say,
Did you call Eileen Olson?
Did we call Eileen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
She even said here.
Tony Conkle, Community Development Director.
Bruce Danielson.
Pete Walter, Oregon City Planning.
Kirsten Green, Kogan Owens, Kogan.
Dave McKay, representing the Amphibious Forces Museum.
And Ron Taylor, representing the PT 658 Restoration Project.
Thank you. We have one guest tonight who's not on the program, so I would just remind everyone in the room that if you did want to have something to say as our topics get discussed, if you would fill out a comment card and give it to Katie, then she'll put you on the agenda for speaking. Our first presentation is by Pete Walter, Oregon City Planner, regarding the South End Concept Plan.
And right before Pete begins the presentation, I just wanted to let everybody know, make the announcement that our meetings have always been recorded and you've always been able to go on our website and view those. A while back they were also shown on cable TV and then they stopped for a period of time, and then beginning tonight they will be broadcast again on cable TV, just to let everybody know.
Now I'm nervous.
And the star of the
As it should be.
Thank you very, very much, everybody, and thanks for the invitation to come and present and give you an update on the status of the South End Concept Plan and where we are in the process. To my right is Kirsten Green, who's principal with Kogan Owens Kogan, who are our lead consultants with the job and have been really good at helping us reach out and get the public involved in this process. I'd also like to acknowledge two of our community advisory team members who are on the Citizen Involvement Council, with Tom O'Brien for Hazel Grove Westland Farm and Bob LaSalle, who is serving in the capacity of Transportation Advisory Committee on the team. So I'm going to whip through this PowerPoint fairly quickly. Is it available on the screen overhead, or should we just see it on the dais?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, brief project overview. We've been preparing a concept plan for the South End Urban Growth Boundary area since about November 2012. And this is an area of land within the urban growth boundary and along South End Road, for which a plan must be developed conceptually before any land within the urban growth boundary can be annexed, rezoned, or developed. Our intent is to develop this plan with strong public involvement and, oh, sorry. It's on me. There we go. Thank you. Thank you. And so my presentation will be to explain what's been done to date and what will happen next.
How'd you get there?
Concept plan has to include a lot of different elements that are mentioned here: housing, transportation, natural, historic, and cultural resources, public facilities and services, sewer, water, and stormwater, parks, open space trails, police and fire protection, and school lands, and how to pay for it all. This is a map of our study area. The area that's shown in green is the study area. It's about 478 acres. The area within the urban growth boundary that is not in the city, which is county zoning, is about 374 acres. And the estimated net developable land within the urban growth boundary area is approximately 283 acres based on our current analysis. Of all the various methods of public involvement, here's a listing. I'm not going to go through all of these, but we have tried to reach out to the public in as many ways as we can conceive of with the budget that we have. We have a community advisory team. We've had 6 meetings, so the numbers in parentheses represent the number of meetings that we've had for each of these things. We have a website. We've done 2 open houses, 2 workshops, 2 online interactive forums. We do weekly Facebook, Twitter, and mass mailings. We have been mailing out postcards throughout the study area and beyond for all of our 4 meetings, and providing regular updates to the various bodies. I think the last time I was before the Citizen Involvement Council was last year, where we talked about kicking off the public involvement process. We've also done some articles in Trail News and some site tours, and we also did a video through Willamette Falls TV. And here's a couple of screenshots of the video. We've got Hunter Teal, who's a student representative on our community advisory team, talking about what he likes about South End today, and Mayor Neely explaining the process and how to get involved in it. And this video is still available on the website. If you want to go there, it's still a great video to look at. But it was produced last year. So the membership of our community advisory team is shown here. It's 18 positions from the county and city, also the county planning organizations and various groups who have interest either as residents or people doing business in the South End area. We also have representatives of the school, the Natural Resources Committee, Parent-Teacher Association, Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, a couple of teens who are active. Hunter is one of them, and we also have a student who is studying geography, Heather Ferguson, and she's been a great asset to the group. So these are our positions, and we feel that they represent a really broad cross-section of the people that are living and working in and around South End, as well as the city at large. So we kicked off this whole thing in December 17th with a community open house. This was really a listening and learning experience where we're trying to learn values and what is important to people today, and if people could change anything about the South End area of the city to make it better, what would that be? And so this was really an open, a very open process at the beginning, and it was followed by the first online interactive survey. And out of that, we developed a set of core values, which are shown here. Rural character. We want it to be a livable community in the future. We want it to have a strong sense of place, which respects the unique culture and history of the area. We want it to respect the environmental quality of the area and have excellent schools. And then from those core values, we ultimately developed a vision statement, which is listed here. And this is the guiding statement for how South End concept plan would be developed, and against which any future development in the area would really be measured. Because when we do future annexations, if they are proposed and those sorts of things, we're going to go back to the concept plan and use it as a reference for how well we've done our job. The second community workshop was on February 27th, 2013, and involved a land use planning exercise. We had a great turnout, and we had about 18 community maps developed. Each map was done by 6 to 8 people at a table, based on a scoring system, and of how to fit a certain number of housing units in and where should those go, where should open space be preserved, where are natural spaces and streams and places of interest that people wanted to show on the map. So some of these were very creative. The vast majority of them met all of the criteria for the planning exercise, which was to show a complete community that met Title 11 requirements under Metro and had good walkability and good connectivity and those kinds of things. And then we went away and used all of that information to create a set of concept maps, which was presented to the public on April 14th. And we called this Forum on the Future, Part 1. We presented 3 concepts and asked the attendees to tell us which ones they liked best, and also what aspects of one they wanted to see they weren't asked to choose one over another, just the best aspects of all 3. And that was followed by a second online interactive forum and survey, which led into Forum on the Future Part 2, which was the most recent open house we've had on June 1st at McLaughlin Elementary School, where we presented the initial draft concept plan. We also presented concepts for streets and trails and other community elements here. And this was a really great day to do it because there was a baseball game going on nearby, and we had great weather and strawberries and ice cream, and had a good turnout there. So I think we had about 60 people show up on that one. Least, yeah. And this was the draft map that was shown on June 1st. It's pretty large scale, but what it's showing is various land use types, where protected wetlands and open spaces are, where street connections would be, where private and public open spaces would be, and where the urban growth boundary is and future transportation's connections need to be to serve the area in the future. And so I'm going to go into briefly some of the features that are shown on that map, and they're categorized. Some of the natural features that are shown on the map are intended to preserve natural spaces and wildlife corridors, wetlands, stream buffers, and minimize road connections where those natural spaces are, and to improve access to natural areas and views. There's a parks and trails component for new parks, open spaces, and gathering places. It shows on the concept plan how all these areas are tied together for a network of trails, and how some of the areas underneath power lines and utility corridors can be used to complement your trail system. And also includes areas for civic uses and public parks and those kinds of things. There is one large park shown on the concept plan for programmed public activities and sporting events and those sorts of things. Housing choices, including single family, large, medium, and small lots, transitional living, multifamily, cottage, and mixed use. The total number of housing units has been reduced from some of the original concepts, but it's still meeting Title 11 requirements, and we're refining that final number. There are some small lot residential and mixed use areas along South End Road. The community amenities section includes 2 small nodes for neighborhood mixed use commercial, and which would serve just the walkable area of this concept plan. We're not envisioning any large commercial areas in this concept plan area, and also areas for civic buildings and uses in public areas. And we've got some examples here of the type of scale of those kinds of things. And most importantly, transportation network, which would be a complete road network with sidewalks, pathways, and bike lanes. South End Road is envisioned to be a 3-lane arterial road with full sidewalks and parking. As an example, I've shown 7th Avenue along Singer Hill, which is an example of a 3-lane section that carries pretty high volume capacity. daily, somewhat like South End Road, and it'll give you some idea of what these neighborhood mixed-use areas might develop as if we follow our plan in the future. Also shown, as is shown on the transportation system plan, are two parallel family-friendly roads. One would be a collector road to help alleviate some of the capacity issues on South End Road. And then uniquely, a slow, narrow road area along the edge of the bluff, which would be a very low volume street out towards Kenema Bluff area that will help loop the ends of some local roads and provide better public access and visibility to the open space. And it's envisioned that houses in that area would face the open space rather than back onto it to create a much more open feel and create better value across the entire concept plan. A couple of roundabouts that are shown in the transportation system plan as likely to be funded improvements are also shown on our concept plan area, so we're dovetailing with the TSP on that. And our hope is to preserve capacity on South End Road through minimization of local street connections directly onto it, while creating better connectivity through the local street network as it develops. Yes.
The road along the bluff, is there a concept of basically kind of continuing the promenade? That concept of a walkable, sittable.
Yeah, the idea is, the promenade is a good example of where houses face a public realm, and our idea is that it would be a very small street section, not your typical right-of-way width of 53 feet, but probably something shorter than that.
You use the public right-of-way to turn it into the promenade part of the right-of-way or whatever. So.
Yeah, there's similar places like if you've been to Selwood above the Oak Bluffs, and in Wilsonville along the open space at the urban growth boundary, there's a similar road that does that, and the idea is pretty much the same, but the street section is conceptual at this point. And
Would that be like Willamette Drive in North Portland then?
That's great. That's the other example I've heard of. Yeah, that's great.
Let's hold our questions till the end
Sure.
so that he can get through the presentation first. Thank you.
Infrastructure, sewer, water, and stormwater in particular, we would try to design into the natural drainage basins for the area rather than just having one square engineered pond in every new development, which has been a lot of what you've seen in older subdivisions. We're trying to utilize the natural drainage of the area and provide better efficiency and design within the stormwater system, and also reduce the impact of the stormwater on individual neighborhoods. So what's next? We'll continue to refine the draft concept plan and develop a final concept plan. We have to develop the implementation elements, which are comprehensive plan designations, each ancillary document to our comprehensive plan, such as the zoning code, the transportation system plan, our parks and trails plan, and all of our engineering plans would need to be revised separately and as an update to all of those. We'll have community advisory team meetings, 2 more of those, a planning commission and city commission work session, I think in October. And then we start the legislative hearing process, which is the formal adoption review and adoption process by the planning commission and city commission. We anticipate having at least 2 hearings for each of those. And I include this chart, which is somewhat detailed, but we can refer back to it to show to clarify what some of these processes are that people talk about. Currently, we're in a concept planning process, which is the blue area shown in the screen. This is where the city is initiating the concept plan, and that's required to be adopted through our comprehensive plan. The area that's shown to the right of the blue area is shown as the sort of the development process, which is owner initiated. Annexations and zoning and development review and building and construction are owner initiated processes, and this process would repeat for each new property that would have to come into the city and be reviewed separately, and so each one of these processes is a separate review process. So the concept plan process is what we do as a city and a community before any of these other processes can even begin. And the timing of this varies pretty widely based on location, owner desires, and market conditions as well. So the concept plan is paid for through Metro construction excise tax grants. So that's how we're able to fund the planning process. So that's pretty brief, but good overview of where we're at, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay. If you go back to that last page that we just saw.
This one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Allows for appeals. Is that for everything, or is it going to all be fast-tracked like what's happening in our neighborhood
Basically,
now?
every process that is a public process allows for some type of appeal, and whether it be adoption of the concept plan, annexation, zoning, development review, well, depending on what level of review they're at, and most of these are public processes. In fact, all of them are, with the exception of building permits. Once the process has gone through, final zoning, and somebody comes in for a building permit.
Yeah, but I know right now there's two have gone in Oregon, in our neighborhood, Hazel Grove Wrestling Farm. They are fast-tracked. They pay more money for the fast-tracking process, and therefore we haven't got any information on one yet, but the other one we did, and it's not really enough time because they're not required to come to the neighborhood association. That doesn't give us time to go to the membership and have them participate in what's going on in their neighborhood. It's like skipping the neighborhood in a way, and I thought that was part of the process. So
well, yeah, I'm just talking about the concept planning process, but
well,
that sounds
but you
like a
have that
separate
in
issue.
there.
Yeah.
And to
Kathy?
me, it's not being allowed. Yes.
So in response to that, I think that you're referring to, there's two subdivisions. They've applied for an expedited subdivision review. By Oregon revised statutes, we're required. We have no choice in the matter. It's an Oregon revised statute that allows someone to come in and apply for that expedited land use process. It's something we don't see very often, but we've seen about 2 or 3 in the last 2 years, I think. And it's a process that's set out by state statute. So it is a little bit different than the one that we have. There is still an appeal process in there, but it is run differently than a typical subdivision that we're used to.
Tony, I suppose the concern on the neighborhood's part is that a specific developer who is one of the major developers in the city has chosen to use that process recently multiple times, and if that's a pattern that's being established, I think we really need to be concerned whether it's allowed by state or not.
Okay, I'd like everyone to be respectful of those people that are in line to speak. And the next speaker is Paul Edgar.
Pete, what is the projected maximum build-out in the number of dwelling units?
We don't know the final number yet, but the Metro requirement is for 10 units per net developable acre in the 2002 expansion area, and 8 units per acre elsewhere. That's net. So
how many?
It works out to about somewhere between 2,000 and 2,600 units per acre. Total.
Sorry, total.
Very tall building.
Wow.
Density is another thing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Historically, speaking in a transportation world, when we have limited shopping and limited facilities and limited everything there, we find that these people are really going to be more mobile using cars. We have no bus service into the area, and it's probably going to be difficult to envision getting bus service into the area unless we make an arrangement with Canby, or somebody like that to try to come in. And if we get, if it exceeds the, let's say 10.5 trips per residential unit, which is kind of the Bible calculations of the number of trips, we look at South End Road, and I have a house off of South End Road, and I know South End Road has limited capacity, particularly when it goes down over the hill. if we end up with 80% of these people looking for employment outside of Oregon City because we just don't have jobs, and they're historically coming from Portland or some other areas, and so we find these people going into a cul-de-sac of South End Road, generating, let's say, 10, 11, 12 trips a day, conceivably, per residential unit. And South End Road is weight restricted going down to Second and Tumwater. At South End Road at Warner Parrott is handicapped right now at VC plus 1. And without really any way to look at it, we have your projections overtax the capacity of the transportation facilities that are capable of being developed. Capable. So we don't have, South End Road can't be expanded. It's in a slide zone. The people are not going east. Yeah, you might filter a little bit of people off through total frustration. What do you plan?
That's what we need. What is your question for Pete?
How can we plan this type of build out? Isn't that incorrect? You can't do it?
Well, there's a lot of assumptions, I think, that have been made there. And, we did respond to those specific statements at the previous CIC. However, that's why we're doing the concept plan. We can't anticipate what the transportation impacts are until we get through a process of this type and look at these issues in detail. I understand that the transportation system won't be built overnight, and that that's just a reality of not having enough money to build it. But the planning process allows for incorporation of adequacy of system development charges and a capital improvement program to support future growth within the urban growth boundary. So we definitely hear that concern. And I believe once we get to the implementation component, we'll be looking very hard at the final number. There's the capacity issue on South End Road, which is how much traffic daily can South End Road within the study area handle, and then there are the areas outside of South End concept plan area which have been looked at with the transportation system plan, and they've made an assumption of density of 10 units per acre based on the transportation system plan as well. And so they're looking at those trips and have actually looked at what needed improvements need to be done outside the study area in order to make the transportation system function. So our belief is that we're using the right metrics. We've identified the needed improvements, and we're going to refine those as we move forward with the legislative hearing process and implementation component.
I was really concerned when one of the planners came back and said, we'll just make South End Road 3 lanes or 4 lanes down the hill. And we know that that's physically impossible.
Okay.
So when
Paul,
there was those types of perceptions
we
we're wondering.
need to go on to the next person. I forgot to remind everyone that you have 3 minutes when you are here to ask your questions, so please keep them as brief as you can. Ingra?
I have a question about the 3 lanes on South End Road also. I live right off of South End on Warner Parrott. And so it's just in the urban growth boundary that it's going to be 3 lanes? Is that the plan?
Well, that's all that we can adopt a plan for under this plan. I mean, we have a city street section that would be adopted to implement it, and it would be there'd be one section for the areas where it's residential, and the other areas another street section for the 2 nodes, which would be neighborhood commercial. But yeah, those would be city street standards within the urban growth boundary. Currently, the county's jurisdiction starts at Parish Road and goes out clear down to 99E. So when the development occurs, following annexation, then that's when the city street standard is applied. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Steve?
Yeah, my question is, which representative body approves the concept plan?
The city commission will have final approval of that.
Of the concept plan?
Yes, yes, and it's adopted through the city, an amendment to the city comprehensive plan. Yeah.
Kathy?
Yeah, then on that theory of the transportation is the second thing I wanted to talk about too. So are they going to do the south end going down to High Street? You can see where it's already sliding again, which happens every year. And Paul might not like the hillside in his yard, because since that's where he lives. Are they going to enhance that before all this traffic is going to be starting to go up and down that? And what are they going to do to eliminate the hazards on 99, people coming in and out of that with all the curves? And have they checked on the any more on the LiDAR maps on the landslides in those areas for that? Thank you.
Yes, great question. On the LiDAR maps, yeah, we have mapping that indicates where some of these concern areas are. Implementation-wise, I think that's something that we will need to address, even though it's not within the study area of the concept plan, through the update to the transportation system plan that we will implement. We can get some specific recommendations from our consultants and from our city engineers on what needs to be done to address the stability of South End as it goes down the hill.
So
yeah.
You're talking about you're going to, in the concept plan, you're going to put the requirements that these things, the LiDAR maps and the landslides, should be in the concept plan so that they are required to physically study that before they build on top in that area.
Well, if I could use the Park Place concept plan as an example, because similar concerns were raised with respect to roads and development in the Park Place area. We had a consultant put a geologic report into the record for the concept plan that talked about some of these engineering recommendations that need to be followed and some of the data that needs to be looked at in order to assure that you've got the best available information with respect to expansion. If expansion is a good idea or not, of a particular road section, or whether it should just be minimized to reduce the potential for impact to a slight area. Because if all the section's doing is carrying volume, you may not have to expand it, because you're basically linking one activity area with another. You know what I mean? And you're not necessarily getting development onto that road section. So those are some of the things we would want to look at. Yeah.
Thank you.
What is next now, Pete? You've done a lot of community outreach, and could you remind us again what the next stage is?
Let me go back. Well, we do anticipate, I anticipate doing a few more meetings with neighborhood associations that are not shown on this list here. But our consultants are working now to develop a final draft map and all of the actual narrative that goes along with it. So, you know, we will have a document and a map for public review in about by October, I believe. And we'll be putting that on the website and emailing people when it's ready to go. So all of the subconsultants, the transportation and engineering people, and all those folks are working on their portions of the plan now.
Okay.
Yeah, finance as well.
So you've done so much hard work, and we thank you for the outreach you've done. But how soon would we see any changes at all on South End Road?
That's a great question. One of the questions that has come up is, you know, where will annexation occur first, and what's the likelihood of annexation occurring in a particular area? I think what we'd like to do is put some sort of a document or a map into the plan that would show roughly, conceptually, where we think annexation would occur first.
Okay.
most likely is going to occur where there's a public facility like a sewer or water connection close that an adjacent parcel can annex and connect to, because it's very expensive and not efficient to extend public facilities way out to the edge of the urban growth boundary and leapfrog a county. In fact, we have annexation criteria that precludes doing that. So we have this concept plan in place which will act as a much better guide for this, and it should be, when it's adopted, if it's adopted, it'll be a better guide for the likelihood of development. So I can't tell you specifically without pointing at a map and taking a guess, but I think it is dependent on a number of factors. As I said, contiguity is one of them, proximity to existing city services, sewer, water, and stormwater, and access to the transportation system as well.
Property owner interest.
And property owner interest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Kathy, are you buzzed in again, or is that one just not gone?
I don't know why it's not.
Yeah. Okay.
If I push it again, I'd probably get up there again.
Well, any more final questions before?
I think I put my name up, but I know Bruce had his hand up forever. No, good.
Okay.
Right. I just wanted to edify, and for myself, I think that you guys get what Paul's saying, and Kathy. South End Road is the going up the hill part is huge. And was there an alternative? I know Paul can speak for hours on it, and he's not going to repeat himself. I agree with everything he says verbatim, but he's also come up with some alternatives. And did you look at some of the alternatives as far as the one road that? What road is that, Paul?
South Forest Ridge Road and Butel combination going over the hill.
Is that on the radar for a alternative?
We've spent a lot of time looking at that question, both through the transportation system plan and through the concept plan. And the concerns that we have about studying it as part of this process is that we looked at it based on a general feasibility kind of analysis. So we looked at the fact that that would be a new road outside the urban growth boundary, not within city jurisdiction. So the UGB would have to be expanded for us to build it. It's owned by Metro as open space habitat. It's within a landslide area and a known geologic hazard area, and it has slopes over 25 and 35%. So those factors, based on our general analysis, were enough for us to say, well, if we're going to concentrate limited transportation funding on either improving the existing transportation system to serve this area or building a whole new road, we should probably defer that study to a separate planning process. And that's kind of where we're at. That's where we're at right now. So we didn't show it on the concept plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then just in part two of that question, it's a separate question, but a little bit. I know that part of the thing was preserving some of the rural nature of the area. Does that affect the zoning for livestock, for horses, for?
Oh, good question. No existing legal land use has to change because of this concept plan. If you're doing farm and forest use on a parcel out in the UGB today, do it for as long as you want.
Would it change their taxation? Would it make a small-time farmer in a disadvantage all of a sudden?
Good question. We asked the assessor's office that, and they said no. Until the land use changes on the property, which would be well after annexation and well after even rezoning. Basically, your zoning might change, but you're still doing your farming or your Christmas tree lot or whatever else. That doesn't change. Upon annexation, the tax rates for certain districts may change. So you go from the sheriff's department to Oregon City Police.
Sure.
And that would change. But the specific questions really ought to talk to the tax assessor's office. But we did try to answer this in detail on the frequently asked questions section of the website, and there's a specific question for that. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Tom?
I would just like to thank Pete and Kirsten and the entire Kogan Owens Kogan team for the wonderful job that you've done in putting this plan together so far, and the involvement of the citizens of the city and the people who are most affected by what's going on. You've really done a great job, and I thank you for it.
Thanks. I appreciate all the wonderful participation of everybody that's been along with this in the process. Thank you.
Okay, is that it then? Thank you very much for coming. I assume, Tony, you're going to introduce the community outreach, Willamette Falls?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm Tony Conkle, the Community Development Director for Oregon City, and tonight we're just bringing in an update on the Willamette Falls project that we're about to kick off. And so a large part of that is the public involvement component of that. As everyone probably in here is aware, in February of 2011, Blue Heron went bankrupt. We began a partnership with Metro very early on after that bankruptcy occurred. And the initial due diligence work that we did was focused on if this was a property that could be acquired by public agencies. There was some concern, things in the newspaper, large bids coming in on the property, and none of those really ever materialized into anything. And so through that due diligence work, we were focusing on trying to get an understanding of what it would cost to hold the property. There's not a lot of information about the property itself. And so I was focusing on, what are the environmental conditions of the site, what's the historical structures and resources available on the site, how do you deal with stormwater on the site. It's a very complicated stormwater system on that property that utilized both this side of the river plus the ponds on the West Lynn side, which were subsequently sold to Clackamas County. And so the stormwater from this site that traditionally went over there was going to be disconnected from the Oregon City side. So you had a stormwater issue that you needed to deal with there. And then also just what it would cost to get the site to what we considered safe and stable. You got a lot of structures out there. I think we ended up identifying about 56 separate structures that vary from buildings that were built around the turn of the century to essentially almost like pole barns, steel girder with some siding on them that were really just constructed to protect equipment or facilities. And so, when you walk out there, it's a very densely developed industrial site. The total acreage is about 23 acres, but the developed part of it's around 17. And within that 17 acres, just above what we call Main Street, what you can see from the promenade or when you walk on the site without going underneath into all the basements and subfloor areas, is about 550,000 square feet of building. And trying to get an understanding of what it would cost to get it to a safe spot. So it'd be some demolition, the holding cost of the property. We put a 10-year holding timeline on that. And so we try to get a handle on what those costs were relative to what the property's worth. As we move through that process, we weren't, as a city, in a position to take down the property and maintain those holding costs. We were hoping to create a larger public partnership that might be able to do that. But at the same time, there was no pressure from the private side to put any bids in on the property. We weren't able to put together a larger partnership, so then we moved into the phase where we're entering right now. Our initial conversation was with the bankruptcy trustee. So it's in federal bankruptcy, so the bankruptcy trustee is running the property. We worked with the bankruptcy trustee to start this public visioning and entitlement process. And we got certain guarantees from him in the agreement that we had. One was to bring money to the planning process. One was to agree to not abandon the property once we come under contract. And also to be a partner in this process in terms of the consultant hiring, being involved through the process, and then signing the land use application, which is necessary at the end in order to do the master plan and the entitlements, the zone changes on the property that would have to occur. So once we did that, he agreed. We also signed an intergovernmental agreement with Clackamas County to bring their staff resources. They've also dedicated $100,000 to the planning process. And then we've applied for, and our commission, our city commission, has agreed to $100,000 a year for this property for 10 years plus staff time. And then we applied for a construction excise tax grant to help with the remainder of that funding. And we recently signed a contract with Walker Macy to take over this master planning process, so the public involvement and master planning process that we are about to kick off. And so part of that, as I stated earlier, is the public engagement. And when we go through this process, you're going to see something very similar to what we were doing with the South End Concept Plan in terms of trying to utilize multiple methods to engage the community. And when we look at this property, we consider it not only a local asset, but a regional and state asset. And trying to reach that larger area and get them involved because of the historic significance of this site, the economic opportunities on this site, the public access that can be had on this site. We see all those as very important. And so, once again, multi-way to engage the community, going to specific stakeholder groups, we found has been very successful with South End. Rather than doing your traditional, here's our 4 open houses, come. There's been a lot more in the public involvement side of going to identifying stakeholders and going to their meetings. You'll also see the social media component and website use that we did with South End. So for Willamette Falls, just a little bit of the history. It's the largest water ball by volume in the U.S., second largest in North America behind Niagara. Very high cultural resource. This was the original land of the Grand Ronde. It was ceded from the Grand Ronde. But it was also a hub for Native Americans for trading, fishing. It was a commerce area before Oregon City, and we moved into this area. Power and water generation, the falls made this an economic center. You saw the original overland power generation of electricity, and they ran 14 miles of power lines to Portland, and you saw what would turn into the World Fair in Portland was all based on lights, and it was because of the abundance of this natural resource, and they were able to harness that energy and create power from it. This is just an overview of the metro region. Oregon City is down in the bottom corner, and the purple areas that you see are regional centers. So Oregon City is designated a regional center in the Metro 2040 Growth Concept map, and we're an underperforming regional center in terms of we don't see a lot of residential in our downtown, and so this does present an opportunity if this is what the community wants to see in terms of extending and redeveloping the original 4 blocks of downtown. This was Main Street. These were the 1st through 4th that were all subsequently vacated throughout the last 120 years as industrialization of that site began to grow and grow and grow. And then all the public utilities and streets in there were vacated eventually. A little bit more of the industrial history. John McLaughlin established a lumber mill there in 1829. It was the first incorporated city west of the Rockies in 1844. The Imperial Flour Mill and Oregon City Woolen Mills established, and the woolen mill foundations are still on the site, and you can still walk through them. Paper mill, the railroad, the locks. So when you look at this site from a cultural and historical interpretation opportunity, you have from how the falls were formed through the Native American, through industrialization, colonizing the West. You've got quite a bit of history that you can tell on these 23 acres that we have right in our downtown. This is an overhead shot of the property. And I've used my cursor. So if you're coming south on 99E, you come into the curve, and this is essentially the north property line. And then the most significant amount of the development on the property are these 17 acres. And then to the south, you have. This is actually Portland General Electric property, and it starts and it comes along here. There's a little seawall, and it creates the pooling dam area. And then the PGE dam continues out and around, like a little Z. But then Blue Heron actually owns the clarifier right here. This is part of the property, as well as the lagoon right here, and then it kind of shoots across towards the railroad track. And then they have a spur line that comes down through the middle of the site, and that spur line continues south about another quarter mile. Where it then reconnects with the main line. So essentially, you have almost a half a mile of Willamette River frontage, and then we've also been working quite a bit with Portland General Electric. They obviously have the best view of the falls. They've been a very good partner to date, providing us access for our consultants and visitors that we take out there. And we've just recently signed an agreement with them saying that public access on their facility, if done, we need to consider safety and maintenance, of course, but that it is something that they see can work on their facilities, that providing public access and education about what they do and access to this amazing waterfall and natural resource certainly is something that they think they can work with us on. So that was an important partnership to get as well. Going back to our ability to strengthen Oregon City's role as a regional center, revitalize Oregon City's downtown, essentially extending our main street and see this additional growth opportunity on these 17 acres on the south side of 99E. And then transform Willamette Falls into a regional destination. We think that the draw to this feature can be pretty significant. Working with our partners, Clackamas County, the state, Metro, we've been relying on 4 values throughout this process, which has served us well to get us to where we're at. And one is the public access to along the Willamette River and public access out to the falls. Economic development, so the economic redevelopment into this site. And when we look at these, and we put these in a circle for a reason, we don't think one of them is more important than the other. We think if you do one of these well, it makes the other 3 better. And so if you can provide excellent public access with a really beautiful, well-done public access way, it just drives the economic development and reinvestment into the property. We have an amazing opportunity here for environmental restoration, whether it be along the riverfront or those microclimates that exist in the midst of the falls. It's a very dynamic place. And then culture and historical interpretation. I already talked a little bit about that, but the importance of this from Native American through the settling, and then even our near future. There were 175 jobs lost when Blue Heron closed. It was a very important economic driver for our community for a very long time. Once again, these are our stakeholders we've been working with, and it's been a very good partnership that we've been able to put together with each of these agencies, bringing in the expertise that one of the others may not have, whether it be the economic development, the property due diligence and acquisition component, obviously the state. We have 99E, with the site has one way in, one way out with a railroad track on one side. So working with Oregon Department of Transportation, both to deal with access along 99E and the interchange with 205. Department of Environmental Quality, dealing with some of the environmental issues on the site. The State Historic Preservation Office has been a member, and we have weekly meetings. They've been to almost all of those meetings, bringing in their expertise, as well as the parks part of the state. So we did our due diligence, and now we're beginning the visioning and planning process. As part of this, we've also worked with the Regional Solutions, which is under the governor's office, and they bring in additional technical expertise, but also access to those state agencies when we need them. We worked with the Regional Solutions Office and the governor's office, and he put a $5 million line item in his budget that's being considered by the legislature right now to go towards this property for site stabilization. It does require a significant match on the locals' part, but that match can be from public, private, grants, philanthropic. So we see that as a plus in terms of helping to bring money to this project, because it is while it's a very unique opportunity, it's also a very challenging site because of its location, its access. We see 17 acres up on top, what we call the Main Street level. I'm guessing there's probably 10 or 11 acres underneath that in terms of multiple sub-levels of old foundations, basements, pilings that exist on this property, which makes it very challenging. Over the summer, while we were doing our due diligence work, we had one of our Hatfield fellows looked at the potential catalytic value. So what could happen if we did this very, very well? And when you look at the possibility for increased tourist spending, leading to an additional 600 local jobs, 560 to 1,000 construction jobs associated with the redevelopment of this property, 550 to 1,100 office and retail jobs, 1,100 indirect and induced jobs from the multiplier effect of the jobs that are on the site, and then just the increased property value, not only of the site itself, but what's around it. And so you do see a very large footprint if you can do this project very well. and what spins off from that. One of the things we noticed early on when we brought folks out on the property was that it was overwhelming. When you walk down Main Street, one of the first things it's just mass of multi-story buildings that are built on top of one another. One may have burned and they built right over the top of it. It was very, very dense. So we worked with a group to just help put down an initial idea, just so when we brought folks out there, they could kind of start to see what the possibility could be out there, just to start the conversation and get them past the, oh my gosh, what are you going to do with all this stuff? And they started, and we looked at kind of the view of this natural era, and we kind of built it on top of one another. This natural area, and that's how the falls were formed, and how the Willamette historically functioned before there was any use of the area. And then you have the cultural era, the Native American history on the site, and then you have the industrial area that came in, and all the power generation and the mill races that are carved out of the basalt through this property. And then is there a new era? Is there a new possibility? And how can you bring all those four ideas together into making a great place? And they said, okay, how can you restore the Willamette River along the Willamette River? How can you bring in public access along there for viewing and habitat restoration? And on this one is very interesting because they incorporated in. This is actually an existing tail race that comes out of the Woolen Mill Foundation. That tail race is still there today. And so this is an example of incorporating this historical cultural resource into a redevelopment of the site. And then you have the economic development opportunity behind that. And in the bottom right corner here is where you can see they circled that tail race that historically came out of the Woolen Mill Foundation, which is this tail race right here. This is a depiction of accessing the falls on the PGE Dam. So how can we work with PGE to provide safe public access that still meets their needs? And can you create a public space, a public access along there that then gets you out to the spot where everybody wants to be, which is right at the falls? And so it was just providing those opportunities to put a visual on, what the opportunities could be on this property. And then one of our favorite pictures at the falls itself. This is where Station A was. Some of the original power generation that happened on the property. This is under PGE ownership, but it shows you the proximity that you can get right up to the falls, to an area that probably most people have never been. So a little bit of the background on why we're doing this, how we got to where we're at. So our next steps are, I'm going to begin the public outreach component of that. This is going to be a very, very quick process, relatively speaking. We are in our agreement with the trustee. We agreed to get a master plan and the entitlements for a hearing in front of our Planning Commission on April 24th of 2014. So there's going to be quite a bit of public involvement up front for the next couple of months. Soon after that starts, there will be some technical work that's going on in order to just start preparing the land use application. It's going to be it's a pretty big document. The main focus coming out at the beginning will be on the transportation. We're already meeting with the Oregon Department of Transportation to start those conversations on what's going to be necessary along 99E. You're coming, on two 90-degree turns, one coming out of a tunnel with limited sight distance. Fortunately, there is a light already at Main Street, which is helpful, and then also dealing with I-205 and that interchange with 99E. Throughout this process, we've kind of set it up where we've asked for 2 of the electeds from each of the partners that will sit on it's like a policy board. And as we go through and we have these community conversations and we get the feedback online, and there will still be somewhat of your traditional open houses where folks come together. We're shooting for the first city celebration. I think it's August 27th. It's a Saturday, where we would have a booth set up there and start this conversation, and then it reiterates on itself, and then you bring back what folks want to see, what do they know about the site, and then we start to refine that with our consultants start to put together some ideas, and then move towards a framework plan. And so this is the first step in a long process. The framework plan is intended to really deal with some of the larger off-site infrastructure access issues, but we're not going to get into a level of detail where, you know, Block 3 is going to be a 4-story building that's half office and half residential. That we're going to leave to the private side. We're going to identify general uses. Where would we like to see public access? Where would we like to see a park? What are types of uses we want to see on this property? And start at that. And then that'll get refined as time moves on. You've probably seen in the paper that Eclipse Development has made an offer on the property. In our agreement with the trustee, both the trustee as well as the city will work with any buyer to try to bring them in and take over the position of the bankruptcy trustee in terms of sitting on the decision-making board, policy group, signing the land use application. We would like them to seamlessly move into taking that over if there is a successful bidder on this property. At this point, the trustee has submitted the document to the court. I think their hearing is in about 2 weeks, and what they do now is they set up the process for the bankruptcy. There'll be an overbid process, which means the bids, he has a bid right now for the property. There will be an opportunity, and I believe it's about a 45 or 60 day, I don't quite remember, where someone could come in and overbid for the property. So the Eclipse Development also has about a 60-day due diligence period, at which time they can walk pretty much for any reason at any time up to that. So at this point, we're still moving forward because the bankruptcy trustee is still the owner. You know, this is the first one where someone submitted something, but we've fielded a lot of interest from developers and investment groups on this property. So, you know, we're just going to wait and see. We'll continue to work with our partners on this process, and we hope that whoever is the successful bidder or buyer of the property, you know, takes the time to look at the work we've done to date, the work we're doing, and sees that as something that they want to be involved with and involved in. We see this as what we've talked about with the commission is, you know, we have an opportunity here to lead, to be a part of the visioning and what happens on this property. You know, the other option is to sit back, and that's certainly a legitimate option, and wait for the private side to come in and do that. You know, we just really believe with the work we've done that it's going to require some type of a public-private partnership on this property, not only to get it redeveloped, but to, I think, maximize the opportunities for the public to access this site again and that amazing resource that's out at the end of it. So a lot there. Hopefully through our public engagement process, you're going to be seeing a lot more of this. We will be coming back to the CIC to give them an update as we go through the process. We'll have our website up soon, the information on that as well, and we'll be aggressively advertising that.
So the first open house, or it will be at the First City Celebration. That's
I believe
when you
that
first
is.
bring it in.
Yeah, it's the 27th. We're working with Main Street Oregon City right now to try and finalize all of that, but that's our intention right now. If that changes, we'll obviously advertise that differently, but we hope to have that buttoned up here in the next couple days.
Okay, we've got some people with questions, and if everybody could be as brief as possible because our night is evaporating from us. Kathy, you're first.
Oh, I just had one. That was a nice presentation. Is that on the city website so other people, or we can look at it, or let other people know about it? No, it's not up yet.
I don't know. That's a good question. I know we've given the presentation before, and it might be embedded in some of this. I don't think it just stands out as it's simple, like a standalone.
Well, it would be nice if it was, because it's a nice presentation.
Yep, and we can
help people with and be less angry.
Yeah, and so what we're hoping is once we get the Rediscover Willamette Falls website up, a lot more of this information will be available there, and we'll get that link from our page over to that,
that would be great.
Project site.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Steve.
Yes, Tony, 2 questions. Even though this property does not abut West Lynn, are they part of the team or the stakeholders in this?
Yes, they are. We've actually met with West Lynn twice already. You know, they see this as, you know, the other side of the river. Obviously, this will have an impact and a benefit to them on some of the, when we talk about that catalytic value, the spin-off of this with the direct access from 43 right across the river. So we've had initial discussions with them. They're very interested in it. So we've contacted them.
And the second question is, what's involved in site stabilization?
What we looked at was we looked at 3 scenarios: leave everything the way it is, demo everything down to Main Street, or selectively demolish the structures that are that have no historical significance, to try and get a price on how much the demolition alone would cost. You've got 8 boilers out there that are going to stay, I imagine. NRI, the company out there doing the demo work, is not going to take them. So there's just, what's left on the site once the demolition and work and recycle work is done are probably liabilities. You're going to have asbestos siding. You've got the boilers to deal with. And so it was to get a price tag on that, to get an understanding how much that would cost. You also had to deal with stormwater, because once they cut the pipe, right now all the stormwater on this property, it was mixed with their industrial effluent, and it came out the 3 tail races on the site, and they put check dams in there in the late 60s, early 70s, and everything was pumped to that large clarifier, and then from there it was pumped over the ponds on the West Lynn, and that's where everything was discharged from. So there was going to need to be site cleanup, because we were going to lose the ability to discharge from where the permit was. And so that site needed to be clean enough that DEQ would sign off on letting rainwater flow through the site and right into the Willamette. Those were 2 of the major issues. We did a phase 2 environmental analysis of the property, because we heard everything from it's basalt, everything's washed away, to it's a Superfund site. We identified that the environmental liabilities on the site were isolated and manageable, probably less than $500,000. So that was another big investment in trying to understand what it would take to stabilize that site. So those were the main large cost items. And then once, let's just say, you take the property down, we had a holding period of 10 years. So what did you need to do? You've got some areas in there you can walk in buildings and there's 30, 35-foot falls, because where they've taken the equipment out, and it's a straight drop down a couple stories to the basement below. Obviously we would have to, as a public agency, secure those. You have to secure the buildings. You have fire issues out there. You just have security issues out there because of the access, and you can actually walk quite around that facility quite a bit without ever coming up where anybody would see you. So that's what we considered site stabilization.
Paul, 25 words or less?
I understand that this bidder that just offered up the bid is really much like I guess a Trojan horse or something. He's
Stalker.
What?
Stalker horse.
Stalker horse. Yeah, that's the correct term. But that they are. What the key element is that they finalized agreements on this kind of the buy off of the debt. So all of a sudden we've got a package that's actually saleable, because there's understandings with all the creditors now that never was in place before. And now, isn't that a correct assumption?
I don't think it's well, the stalking horse part, I don't know where that came from, and I don't know that that's accurate. I mean, we've gone to Eclipse website and looked at the work that they've done. The bankruptcy trustee has reached an agreement with the main creditor, the first in line.
Yes.
The Department of Energy has $1 million lien on the office building in the front. They have not come to an agreement yet.
With that one.
Correct. But I think that the agreement with Sempro, which was the holding company, which had the largest after Bank of America was paid, with the Clackamas County sale, did come to an agreement. I do not know the financial terms of it until those go public.
Then, if we change the zoning on that, we're going to have to push that industrial zoning someplace else within basically our city limits. You got any ideas where you want to relocate?
That's part of the work, because when we did Beaver Creek concept plan, we believed that we had more industrial land than we're required to. And so that's going to be part of the work, is looking at where do we fall in our industrial land inventory once you take out some of this acreage. Or is employment part of this in the concept plan?
Thank you.
Brian?
I think one of the important things to remember is this is about excitement for Oregon City. There's nothing more exciting than those falls out there. And a real interesting thing that I recently found out is Metro is looking seriously at the trolley bridge, turning that into a major north-south route for bicyclists and pedestrians, which runs all the way to Portland, jumps onto Main Street, Oregon City, and hence to the Blue Heron site. And that's exciting because if you talk with tourism people right now, one of the biggest tourism economic drivers is bicycles right now. And so it's a real exciting thing for Oregon City. We've got a lot of potential here, and we have other things going for us too. And you know, in the past, you know, Oregon City was one of the least exciting areas in the Portland metro area, and we have a chance to really change that. And that's what I want to see out of this progress and this development.
Michael?
Well, kind of getting back to for me, I guess it's zoned industrial, and obviously most people that know me know that have a lot of history with the mill. It at one time had 600 jobs, and they weren't retail jobs that paid $9.50 an hour. They were family jobs that guys could raise their families on, and there was up to 600 of those people. And that mill brought in $17 million into the economy, and it paid the city $500,000 in taxes, and it recycled 500 tons of paper a day. So it was actually a very green business in a sense. And whatever it seems to me that retail and residential are the easiest things to develop. Everybody seems to want to be a retail or a residential developer. Industrial is a little bit tougher, but it also brings back bigger money in the sense of what I just spoke of. Is there still talk in being a hub with Metro with the 2030 plan, do they call it?
Yeah, 2040.
2040 plan. What about I mean, really, there's rail, which isn't conducive to condos. There's the waterfall, which is like you said, can be quite noisy. It's great to visit, but it's also quite, like you said, the microclimates is quite damp and moist and wet. Has there been any talk on the table at all with anybody about continuing with either some kind of agricultural or high tech, or even more Back to the Future with paper, any kind of industrial, heavy industrial at all? And I know sometimes it seems counterintuitive, but if you walk through Newport, you'll see fine dining across the street from Pacific Seafood and their giant factory, across the street from NOAA, across the street from a art museum, and hotels and condos. And so obviously it can work, as Newport can be an example. Has anybody talked about industrial at all?
We've specifically avoided talking about uses on the site.
Okay.
Because we didn't want to be in a position of folks coming and saying they've already decided what they're going to do with it. We drove our consultants nuts all summer that they weren't allowed to think about anything other than doing the due diligence, to be perfectly honest. It's something where we have to have a community conversation about what do we want to do out here. And, balancing that with, the market reality of, unfortunately, all the infrastructure on that site's been taken out. Pipes, everything of value. And so, if it would have been left, could it have come back as a general industrial a lot easier? Yeah. Can it still? Maybe. But I think that's a conversation we need to have as a community in terms of, is it just general industrial again? Which, I'm not sure with the amount of investment needed in that property, it's tough. But
Sure.
is there other kind of employment that can be there? Or it's like you said, it's outside of our mixed use downtown zone. Can we come up with something better that offers more uses that traditionally we've tried to separate through the zoning process? Is there a way to bring some of those back together there?
Sure.
And I think that's a great conversation to have.
I think that the tourism would still be a factor. I know a lot of people drive to Bonneville, and that's about as heavy industrial as you can get. And there's a lot of tourism up there.
Definitely. Yeah.
Anybody else? Tony, that was great. I appreciate your information.
Thank you for the time tonight.
Thanks, Tony.
Now, I recognize that we're probably behind schedule because we've had so many wonderful presentations and we're not done yet. But I also think that everybody's pretty comfortable in here, considering the weather outside. So hopefully, if we run late, it won't be a strain on anybody. I'd like to invite our next speakers up. Mike's going to introduce them. And then we'll try to get out here by 9:15 after our business is concluded. So let's put that as our goal.
Well, I'm going to let Dave and Ron introduce themselves as they get going with their presentation. Some time ago, quite a few years ago, I started following two boats that are in our neighborhood, and there was a couple of boats in World War II that are a couple styles of boats. You see the big battleships, but there's also another story about the support ships that really turned the tide in the war. And there's very little of these boats left. In fact, there are two boats that are unique in the world, and they weren't as one of them wasn't quite the star of the war, but it did a lot of work. And that's a landing craft vessel, LCI 713, which is up on the screen right now. This boat is actually the only restored boat in Oregon, in the world. And then there's a second boat that we'll be looking at, and that one is the one that John Kennedy made famous. And that will be coming up pretty soon. That is PT 658. We don't have a lot of time, and these gentlemen can speak to what we're doing. What I'm asking tonight is that we're kind of fast-tracking this a little bit in a good way. They have a time constraint, the Navy, that has been very hospitable to them, but these are civilian boats. They look like Navy. They are Navy boats, but they're decommissioned, and they're like a retired officer hanging out on the Navy shipyard. They need to move. And what I think that we have is a home for them. We have a great opportunity with John Storm Park. We have this $900,000 park that we've built that doesn't get a lot of use. We have the infrastructure for these boats to come. But what we're trying to do, Mayor Neely has seen these boats. We took a little excursion out and brought a few of the people from the city, and he's pretty excited by it too. But we have a process to bring these boats to the city. And so Mayor Neely invited them to the city commission, and the commission would probably recommend them come back to us and see what the CIC would say. So what I'm looking for tonight is a vote of confidence from the CIC that we can forward to the city commission as neighbors. That if they met all the credentials, all the criteria as far as if the water board and the state gave us okays. If all the ifs are okay, that we would welcome these boats to Oregon City. And to fill in on a little bit of how special these boats are, I'm going to let these gentlemen speak.
Okay, my name is Dave McKay, and I'm representing the Amphibious Forces Museum. And we are the ones that are restoring the landing craft infantry LCI 713. And if you don't know what a landing craft infantry is, don't be ashamed about it. The Navy doesn't know either nowadays. 70 years ago, however, over 900 of these were built, of which there were 2 yards in Portland that built them. And they operated from July of 1943 to the end of the war in all theaters. And their primary responsibility was to land troops on enemy shores, which was a new concept. Previous in American history, people would find a port and land, and then you go fight on land. And this time they had to go right from a beach. Hopefully, if this works, which it's a different computer. But there we go. Oh, we're going to hit the space bar. Anyway, just to show you basically what they look like, the one on the left actually was one built in Portland, and it was and that's a photograph of his trial run. And the one on the right is, in fact, the one that we're restoring as it came back from World War II. And it was in combat, and it was quite a few engagements, and sometimes with some tragic results. The upper photo on the right side, the sailors, it's probably a little difficult to say, but the individual in the center row in the middle, actually the most famous LCI sailor I know of, which he was in the Royal Navy. His name was Lieutenant Cuff, Alec Cuff. You know him as Alec Guinness. And if you don't know who he is, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi. So even the Jedis were involved in this concept. Anyway, we started out basically with this concept, with this project was started. It was basically a piece of rust, and we've now got it to the point where, like some of the pictures on the right side, it is reasonably good condition. What problems are now is just trying to find parts after 70 years for certain things, but we still find them, and that's what it looks like today. As Mike mentioned, essentially we're looking for a home, and we'd like to start working together, which we have two different groups here with the PT boat, which you'll hear in a moment. But we need to start working together with a concept called Maritime Heritage, which has got some other stakeholders involved, and with the whole idea being is to be able to find a location to where you can actually start telling the whole story of what the Columbia River and the Willamette did. Which I think the previous speaker talked about, a little bit about the falls and Native American usage of craft to commercial vessels, recreational vessels, and then of course military vessels, because they're part of the story, as well as trying to intermix that with even like the environment, like what the river is today. And so that's what we're looking for, but I think our first point is just looking for a place to put both vessels in the same location. To start from there. So if you want to go ahead and start with it.
Could I use this microphone?
All right, where's the camera? I also front a bluegrass band, so I'd like to.
They're all
okay. Good. Well, thanks and for considering our little presentation today. I am the restoration director for the PT 658, which means I generally am covered in sawdust and paint chips and looking for power tools. And our president couldn't be here today because he is having a grandchild down in Phoenix. So would my able assistant please start a little video? We're going to let this, this is a recent little thing that put on mainly for a fundraising situation, but it describes our project a little bit, and then I'll speak just briefly after that. Thank you.
It is one of the last handful ever built, and it is the only one in the world that still runs under its own original power. A phoenix of an earlier time that has literally raised from its own ashes. PT 658 was built to serve along its sister ships in the battles of World War II. However, as one of the youngest to report for duty, it never saw action, and therefore it survived. Found in the San Francisco Bay Area by a group of World War II PT boat vets in their 70s, it was pulled from the mud in 1994 and transported to Portland, Oregon, where they set out to fulfill their dream of riding upon the decks of a mosquito boat.
There's Maury, he's still on our crew.
With the same determination and duty that saw these vets through the war, the boat has been resurrected to its original wartime incarnation. It has survived setbacks of finding or fixing the original equipment, a major fire, hence the Phoenix reference, and loss of most of its original stakeholders that set out to save this piece of unique 20th century history. The boat has seemed to defy all odds.
We started in on this job, there was all kinds of people that said that that boat will never be back in the water again, so it does our heart good to see the thing underway and know that those people were wrong.
Through the years, a younger generation of Korean and Vietnam vets have come on board to stand by their veteran brothers and take up the torch that was lit by the original group. That fire of passion for the 658 now burns in them.
Once you get attached to these World War II guys, there's something about those guys that were heroes when they were 17 years old, and that lifestyle that they learned in the Navy stayed with them.
Many of the deep, dark secrets that seemed destined to be buried, along with the shipwrecks of the history of the Pacific, have now been passed on.
I came down here to help a buddy work on an old boat. And I met some PT boat veterans who I learned to respect what they did in the war with these fragile old boats. I learned firsthand stories that nobody will ever hear.
We were jumped by 4 Japanese planes, and one of them made a suicide dive. The plane went right straight through the boat, and I was up on the bow. When that plane hit, it was like somebody jumping on a springboard or something. We just went sailing off like we'd been shot from a catapult.
We didn't really realize how expendable we were until they started burning the boats when the war was over. So they didn't intend to take any home.
That saga of PT-658 is as heroic as any tale out of the Mediterranean or Pacific. Its mission has been to capture and preserve the living and rumbling history of the mahogany coffins that wreaked havoc on the enemy. 658's story is no less imperiled either. Due to the new directives from the Department of Homeland Security, the boat is no longer welcomed in the Portland Navy shipyard and must find a new home by June 30th, 2013. To make matters worse, it has also been dry docked since a marine surveyor found a good deal of dry rot in the hull and superstructure. The volunteers have been carefully peeling away the rotted sections, exposing large portions of the interior. The tax-deductible foundation needs contributions to keep the boat and the dream alive.
To get this boat back into running condition is going to take us close to $200,000. These boats take care. I think every 2 years we pretty much have to take it out of the water and make repairs.
We're always trying to raise money, and we'd love to have Bill Gates or someone come, or some Big Daddy or whatever, but hasn't come forward quite yet.
But more important than one benefactor, it is the legions of us who, just like the veterans that came together 2 decades ago to accomplish the impossible, can get up from our chairs and pay history a visit and a tribute with a contribution. SaveThePTBoatInc.com is the group's website, and they are hoping that people watching this story will, like you and me, stand up and be counted for, just like the kids who went to war to save our way of life 68 years ago. From the shoreline, I'm Chad Booth.
Thank you, Kate. That was just a recent little fundraising video that somebody volunteered to put up for us. We're totally financed by $10 here, $20 there, and many companies, local companies that have made parts and contributed to the restoration. We get grants from local industry and that, but most of it is just volunteers stepping up to do that part. Our goal is to have a place to put it. Like they said there, we have to leave the Navy base. They have given us an extension for a while, but we need a home for the PT boat so people can come down and visit and see some really wonderful local history. It's amazing to me what these guys did in 23 years. And I've been on board down there for about 5 years, I think, and to see the relationships that come between people in the boat, I mean, that's more important to me almost than the wood and the motors and all that. But it is the only one in the world that runs and floats. We get visitors from all over the world to come down and take a look at it. So we need a home, and so just put that idea out there. some questions, please.
Yeah, how many people do you think, if we had these two boats here, what type of draw could that generate? What do you guys think is the possibilities out of this?
I probably couldn't speak to exact numbers at this point, but I do know that recently at the Rose Festival, we probably had 20,000 people come through it at the Rose Festival this year, and it's on the barge now. It's in dry dock and repairs. 4 weeks, I think we're going to be back in the water, and that's my goal anyway. But we had probably that many folks. It's circulated. You can speak to the LCI and your visitors, I suppose. Once we find a home that's accessible, we can increase the amount of visitors. Right now, to bring a visitor to see the boat, we have to give the base 24 hours notice with a driver's license number and security checks and ID stuff, So it makes it tough to bring a visitor. I've escorted visitors from Chicago, Holland, whatever. Anyway, so wish I could be more precise on your question. What else?
All the speakers that are on.
I can't get to
Oh, okay, so Damon, maybe.
Well, as someone who does know what an LCI is, because I was with ACU-1 and was an LCM and LCU commander, as well as an LST crew member, I'm a Gator from the very beginning. So from that aspect, I fully support the fact that something has survived after seeing them used and abused in the South Seas as every possible transport, as well as the PT. I guess, first off, I can think of a perfect home for them, which would be the Cove. Should that project ever get done, it would make a beautiful location. It'd be safe from flooding and everything. Absent that, the old log lagoon for the mill looks like a really good site for them too. I would absolutely endorse, using John Storm Pier. If anything else, get the stupid seals off of it so people can use it. And you can put one on each side because the PT should nestle in shoreside much easier than the LCI. But I'm just concerned about the long-term ability to keep them on the river when everything, including houses, come down in in the wrong season. So it's but as far as my vote, and I'm sure McLaughlin in general would support at the very least giving you a home while you're kicked off the base and before you find something more permanent. But I definitely think that they belong on the river, and they belong where people can see them and touch them and be part of the history of them. So,
Brian?
Yeah. Interesting this came up tonight. I just saw the boat in dry dock last Saturday on a boat cruise that I took. But I also saw it at Milwaukee Days, and it was parked there, and it by far outdrew the rest of the festival by the way it looked. There was a huge crowd on that. It really draws people. I saw it for myself. And outdid the beer tent and everything else put together.
It's all about the paint. I camoed it out last year.
So the more stuff that people get excited about that we can bring to Oregon City, the better, is my viewpoint. And this is something that a lot of people get really interested in, just like Rose Festival days when the warships come in. These are small warships, and but they'll be here potentially all the time, or much of the time. And so I'm very much in favor of this.
Sadly, that YouTube video didn't show the interiors, and that's the exciting part, is when people get to walk through and envision what it was like to live aboard one of those boats. Bob?
Well, as a retired infantry officer whose mother happened to be a Rosie the Riveter, she might have helped build one of those things. I'd like to offer a few dollars in support for you and hope this goes forward for Oregon City.
Thank you.
Michael?
Can you show one thing that you all alluded to earlier is the potential, as we have a tremendous waterfront. We didn't get the luxury of Portland when they took out their street and put the waterfront park in. We didn't have space for that, so we still have this waterfront with very little attention to it, and we have this promenade that nobody much walks along. And so beyond these boats, as you all alluded to earlier, there is this maritime heritage. One of the things I thought about when I was quite a few years ago in Selwood, there was an 1800s wooden sailing vessel called the Sarah, and I lost track of that, but they brought it out, and it would have been, I always thought, wouldn't that be a great attraction? Maybe it's still out there, but there's other boats of historical significance, and that could be something that we look at with this tremendous amount of waterfront that isn't accessible really readily for people, but boats could dock, and the cove or the lagoon, we have lots of opportunities to bring more in. Could you show them the presentation you had?
We're in a bit of disarray with the boat one place and our shop in another, but the boat is housed in a building now. When it's in the water, we just drive it right into the building. I can do that. I can speak.
She'll show everybody.
There you go. All right. I feel like I ought to sing to you or something. But we drive it right into a house, and this structure, we have a workshop across this end, and majority of this structure was donated to us and built for us right here in Portland. Moving forward, we have plans for a heritage or a history center. We have the float for that, and we'll begin, when the boat's back in the water, we can pay more attention to start building a history center. We are about history. The whole project is about educating people to these boats, and then, but yet have one remaining in the water. There's one being restored now in New Orleans for the same purpose. It probably won't get in the water. It'll just be kind of a walk by it kind of thing. But we're intent, ours will stay in the water. We have 2 curators that do nothing but look for history of the boat. They go to the National Archives and pull up history of who served on the boats, and it's a tremendous effort for history. We have curators that just look for PT boat stuff. We are now the proud owners of all the coffee cups and a toaster that went in a PT boat. So our galley is almost complete when you get down in the boat. So that's just kind of a vision of the future for us. And yeah. So.
Katie, you were next with a question. I don't have a question. You don't have a question? All right. Anybody else want to ask any questions before? I believe, Mike, is that right? You want us to have a consensus or something on this? Or
is there a motion to?
Could I just take 1 minute? I'd like to award him with an original plank screw. The PT boat metal you can't even buy anymore.
Thank you, sir.
I have a few more in my pocket.
Best $20 I ever spent.
Part of history.
So we would entertain a motion if someone wanted to. What is it? What is the motion?
That we recommended this to the city commission.
Okay, that we're in favor of bringing both of these boats here.
Yes.
Second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we write a letter to the city commission to recommend allowing these boats to come to Oregon City. Is there any discussion? Is there anyone, we're going to take a vote then. Is there anyone that needs to recuse themselves because they would have some conflict of interest on this? All right, let's go ahead then.
Okay. Tony?
Yes.
Michael Berman?
Yes.
Paul Edgar?
Yes.
Amy Wilhite?
Yes.
Kathy Hogan?
Yes.
Tom O'Brien?
Aye.
Steve Anderson?
Yes.
Faith Leith?
Yes.
Damon Mabey?
Aye.
Alice Watts,
Yes.
Bob LaSalle,
Yes.
Barbara Rankin,
Yes.
Diane McKnight,
Yes.
Eileen Olson,
Yes.
Ingra Rickenbach,
Yes.
Marianne Jensen,
Yes.
and Brian Boyce.
Yes.
It passes.
Okay. Unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen.
That's for both boats, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
That's right.
Definitely.
What we will do is our secretary will write a letter to the city commission, and I assume you'll be making a similar presentation to them.
Okay, thank you very much.
What's the next commission? Katie, it's not
It'll be 7/17, July 17th.
July 17th.
We do have a work session on the 9th, but the next meeting is the 17th.
Does that date work for you guys? Maybe you could make an appointment
That
to get
will-
on that?
Yeah, I think they've already spoke to the mayor, and I think things are in the works, but that all has to be
Okay,
approved.
so
through
it's
the-
already being considered?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. And I'm sorry it took so long to get to you, but it was,
That's
we
right.
saved the best for last.
Come on down to the Butteville store Saturday night and I'll sing to you, and you can lean on John McLaughlin's desk in there.
Okay.
What's the name of your band?
Corral Creek.
May as well get a plug.
Okay, we don't have any Ask Oregon City Public Works tonight, so we will step right into the approval of the minutes, which you are all emailed. Does anyone have any comments, corrections to the minutes that were presented through email?
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the minutes as they were presented be approved.
Okay, we could call for unanimous vote.
I have to abstain.
So let's do this again really quick. Tony,
Yes.
Michael Berman,
Yes.
Paul Edgar,
Yes.
Amy Wilhite,
Yes.
Kathy Hogan,
Abstain.
Tom O'Brien,
Aye.
Steve Anderson,
Yes.
Faith Leith,
Yes.
Damon Mabey,
Aye.
Alice Watts,
Yes.
Bob LaSalle,
Yes.
Barbara Rinkin,
Abstain.
Diane McKnight,
Yes.
Eileen Olson,
Yes.
Ingra Rickenbach,
Yes.
Marianne Jensen,
Yes.
and Brian Boyce.
Yes.
It passes. 2 abstentions.
Okay, thank you. Our next agenda item is the farmer's market, which we talked about, I think, 2 meetings ago, and we were going to look into whether or not we wanted to do that again. As you may recall, William Gifford and Larry Hanlon pretty much instrumentally there. We did have some volunteers that would meet up at the farmer's market at Red Soils to help them, just talk to people, tell them about the neighborhoods, tell them how to get involved. It was a good outreach for this organization to make. But in order to do it again this year at the farmer's market, which we would propose to do it very similarly, just once a month through July, August, September, and then the last month that the farmer's market is on Red Soils is in October. So we'd be looking at four times in the next 4 months. But I don't know if anybody really is interested in volunteering for that. I don't mean to sound negative, but I've been involved in many, many committees over the years, and if there isn't a general consensus of support that people are willing to bring their warm bodies to help, then I wouldn't want to ask just a couple of people to do it themselves. I don't think that's something I will not ask someone to do, unless they really have a passion for it and want to. But I'd just like to get a consensus tonight. Do we have any interest in this group to start this up again? Anybody?
Well, I kind of got asked to do it or volunteer. I don't know. I don't know how it happened, but I think it's important.
Yes.
And I think one Saturday out of the month and 4, and I know that I think we talked and there was 4 that had spoke last time. They're in the minutes, and if they're still interested. I don't know if everybody can have my cell phone or email me, but I think we should do it. And I can make time when Saturday a month, and I would be enthusiastic about it. And
Well, the specifics are this, so that you have a better idea. The farmer's market actually opens at 9. Setup is between 8 and 8:30, and people do start coming as early as 8:30.
Mhm.
And then they close down at 2. So that's the time frame, and then you'd have to tear down your canopy. And
where's it stored at? Where do they keep the canopy at?
well, that's another thing. We'd have to find one. William Gifford brought his own when he
Oh, okay.
was doing it. Damon?
Well, yeah, that's, I was going to say, I did it for a couple of years, and I would have raised my hand on this, but I got something going at the end of July and the end of August. It'd be September before I could. But the way it worked out before, William had a table and his canopy. We have a table in the neighborhood office. It's M&A's, but we have no problem donating it for the process. But a canopy is something that you need to come up with, because July and August and even that's the heat, and in September it's the rain. So that would be something that would need to happen. The way it worked out is we tried to set it up as 3 2-hour sessions. The people in the beginning, the startup would set up, and the people at the end would tear down, and then the people in the middle would just, do their presentation. It was usually teams of 2, so that if somebody walked up while you were having your talk, the other person could talk to them. And sometimes nobody talks to you for a couple hours and it gets boring. So it would basically be 6 people a day to really do a good show. We also had a laminated map of Oregon City with the neighborhoods drawn out on
we
it.
need to get a new one,
Yeah.
because we have a new neighborhood.
Yeah, and although it just said CIC, so we could just, but we need a new one because the other one has dots all over it from the people that would come, and we'd say, please put a dot where your house is. Oh, you're in this neighborhood. Here's the pamphlet with the information on your neighborhood. Like when they meet and who your person is. Here's their website. Here's the city website, kind of thing. And so it was a great way. Well, we found out that we had a lot of Tower Vista people that were coming to that, but there was no Tower Vista, so we knew we really need to start re-energizing these neighborhoods, and that was a lot of the catalyst for that.
We also had a flyer with all the neighborhoods
Yeah,
listed,
that's what
and
we-
then the
that's what we-
contact names for the executive
Yeah.
officers.
Who prints those?
I have the flyer.
Yeah.
And I
So-
could get the map as well,
Yeah.
if you wanted one.
Would that come out of CIC budget, or is that out
It
of
would
our-
just be the city would just provide it for you.
When would this first July meeting?
Third.
They used to do it the 3rd Saturday, and I talked to Jackie, the farmer's market gal, and she said 3rd and 4th Saturdays are the best for her, for us to be. The reason she said that is the 1st is really busy and a lot of booths, and there might not be room for us on the 1st and 2nd, but 3rd and 4th probably yes.
Third worked really well we were able to set up and do everything we needed to do, so, but yeah, the thing is you kind of sort of need 6 people. You
Yeah.
can get away with 2 or 3. William and I, the first year, I just showed up and helped him set up, and even though I was on the end, and then he'd show up and help me tear down, kind of, patting each other's back on that. But it's 15 minutes, but you also need a pickup or SUV to haul the table as well as the handouts and all that. So.
Yeah, the logistics is the biggest thing, figuring out where you're going to get all your stuff and get it up there at 8 o'clock and be set up by 8:30, and then tear down at 2.
The good news is, up until 8:30, you can drive right up to wherever it is, unload everything, and then you just drive the vehicle out and set up, and then
Right, that's the cutoff.
Yeah, so it's kind of fun, to a large extent. I mean, you see a lot of people, you talk about a lot of things. Depending on how close you are to the music, it's either too loud or too quiet. But
well, that's another thing. The booth might not always be in the same location.
right, yeah, it moves around depending on, because her paying customers get priority on sighting, and I can't blame her for that at all.
Tom?
I will volunteer for
would you?
July.
Thank you. Tom, did you,
I would
did
too.
you have a comment?
I would volunteer for July too.
Awesome.
I've previously volunteered.
Yep.
Any month you need help.
Excellent. This is coming together. This is great, you guys.
I volunteered as well before. Mike and I would be happy to, whatever month you need, or I could even do 2.
So you're saying July 20th, right?
At the third Saturday,
What is that date?
20th?
Yeah, the third Saturday in July would be the 20th.
And then in August, the third Saturday would be the 17th. And in September, the 21st. And October would be the 19th. Okay, so, Mike, do you...
I know it's a long ways away, but, put me down for September, and I'll need a follow-up on that, but, and that's the other thing is somebody kind of needs to call everybody that, like, Thursday or Friday night and say, remember, you work in the booth at...
I'll do September too.
Thank you, you guys. This is wonderful.
Yeah,
Michael?
that's awesome.
I'm available September.
Awesome.
And I'm willing to call the people if you want me to. If you send me their phone numbers.
Fantastic.
Sure.
Very cool. You probably would be better remembering that.
I think an outstanding issue, though, was getting the canopy.
Yeah. That's
what I was
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that just
This,
the
yeah.
pop-up shade with, the pop-up ones?
Yeah.
I have one with stakes, but it doesn't,
Yeah.
that wouldn't work on a pavement.
Michael,
Okay.
in September, I'll provide the canopy.
Okay. You got enough? You got enough
Along
to work
those
on?
lines, on the canopy, there are very specific requirements for the canopy. They need to have at least 20-pound weights for each leg because of wind. So the county is required, since there's no ability to stake into the cement, that they need to have weights done. And
How much does a concrete block weigh?
depends on the
I mean,
block.
that's what I weigh my...
Yeah, it depends on the block. It just needs to be able to be secured to the leg, either the leg inside it, tied off, or whatever. What William and I did is we got PVC pipe and filled them full of sand, screwed hooks on the end, used the end caps and screwed hooks on the end and just hung them right off the little crossbar supports, and that worked. They had to be, I think, 3 feet, 2.5 feet. But Jackie's actually got a blueprint for doing those. But
Yeah.
All right.
So
got
we're
enough
in.
to get going?
Yeah, I'll be calling you.
Wow,
Okay.
that's wonderful. Thank you. All right, the next item of business is the discussion of the possible cancellation of September meeting because of Labor Day.
I had a comment. I had a comment on the last.
No, we don't.
Tom?
On the last issue, I have participated on 2 occasions in the farmers market. And I just would like to ask that those people who are participating this year consider as you're working if you think that it is worthwhile are doing it again next year. I personally did not feel that the response, the 2 occasions I was there was a good crowd the one time. The second time I was there, we mostly stood around. There wasn't much of a turnout. I think a far better venue for our commitment is the National Night Out, which gets hundreds of people, and we really can find people who are active in the city. One of the disappointing things with the farmer market was that many of the people didn't live in the city. And so you'd ask them, where do you live? Well, I live out in Beaver Creek, or I live down Malala, or I live, somewhere outside of our CIC responsibility areas. And so that was disheartening to me, I guess. And so I would just ask that those of you who do man it this year, consider whether or not it is a viable venue for us in the future.
Well, I can speak to that too. I volunteered a couple of times, and my experience was a little bit different than yours, Tom. What I found was that people were hungry to know how to find out things in their neighborhood. It's amazing that all these neighborhood associations have existed for years, some longer than others, but people just don't understand that they can get involved and they can find out about the city process. They can have a voice that is heard, and they just don't know. So I had a lot of people coming when I was there saying, well, you know, I'm really upset about this, that, or the other thing, and they wanted to know what the process was. And so we were there to help them understand that. And it was great.
But what I find, though, is we give out postcards for our meetings to everybody, and now they're colored, bigger, but the participation isn't bigger because of those. So they could come.
Yeah. Well, don't give up.
National Night
I
Out.
haven't for 20 years.
So we should do something on National Night Out.
Yeah,
National Night Out is
which
August.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important venue because it is all city people.
We use the same Pope. So.
Yeah.
What
is the date for that?
August 6th.
Is it
Is
the
it that
first
early?
or the second?
Yes,
I
it's the
thought
6th.
Oh, is it the 6th? Okay, August 6th.
Oh, boy, that's early. Okay.
The first Tuesday in August.
Okay.
August 6th. Okay.
Well, we
All
could
right.
have maybe
5:30 to
a bunch of us there.
Yeah.
9:30, I believe.
Okay, well, let's go back then to the September meeting, which falls on the Labor Day
Move
weekend.
approval.
Did we have a motion?
Yes.
Who made, was it you that made it?
Damon just moved, and
He
then
made it, and I seconded it.
Kathy did.
Okay. Any
Call the
discussion?
question.
Okay. All right.
Aye.
Okay.
9 o'clock.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Tony?
Discussion. Discussion.
Michael Berman? She said discussion.
Yeah, but he called
But
the
I called the
question,
question,
so
so-
here we go. We're just moving right along.
I think we ought to give somebody a chance. I mean,
I guess I don't
this gets a little out
understand
of
what,
control if you-
It's Labor Day.
So that-
It's Labor Day.
Weekend.
all right,
It is Labor
And,
Day.
yeah.
that's what I was wanting to
Yeah.
know.
Yep.
The building's closed.
Well, that.
The building
Am
will
I
be
still
closed.
starting? Am I yes?
Are we ready to?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
So Tony already went, and he said yes. Michael Berman?
Yes.
Paul Edgar?
Yes.
Amy Wilhite?
Yes.
Kathy Hogan?
Yes.
Tom O'Brien?
Yes.
Steve Anderson?
Yes.
Faith Leith?
Yes.
Damon Mabey?
Aye.
Alice Watts?
Yes.
Bob LaSalle?
Yes.
Barbara Rankin?
Yes.
Diane McKnight?
Yes.
Eileen Olson?
Yes.
Ingrid Rickenbach?
Yes.
Marianne Jensen?
Yes.
And Brian Boyce.
Yes.
Okay. All right, we're moving on to committee reports. Our first one is our CIC Bylaws Review Committee Chair, Bob LaSalle. And you did get a written report from him in your packet, but he's going to, I think are you going to have some comments still?
I can make those comments if some people did not get that.
Hey.
It was an attachment on
Yeah.
the computer.
Oh, right.
Okay, maybe you should, maybe not everybody saw
Okay,
it.
I'll just read what I put in the attachment. At the end of tonight's meeting, I'll hand out copies of the revised bylaws. All deletions from the existing bylaws will be crossed out, and any additional letters, words, paragraphs, sections, etc. will be in bold. Special notations will be in italics, so please, the reason I'm not giving them out immediately, but at the very end of the meeting, is I'd like you to take them home. Take some time to study them carefully, and then at next month's meeting, we can discuss the bylaws. So at the end of the meeting, if you all just kind of come by here, I've got a copy for each and every one of you. And then, Katie, if you could mail those to the two people that are out in attendance tonight. And any questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next committee report would be crime prevention. That's Todd Last, and he's not here, so unless he gave it to someone else. No, okay, we're moving on. Land use, Paul, nothing, Paul? Okay. Transportation, that's, Bob, you're up again.
Again, I put quite an extensive attachment in the computer, in the agenda. So if you go to your computer and look at the agenda, you'll find that attachment there. Basically, I've shown how you can go into the computer and find out all the information about the transportation system plan as it affects your neighborhood. Quite an extensive list there. And then we had a meeting, the Transportation Advisory Committee had a meeting on June 18th. It's the last meeting until September because we take vacation in July and August from that committee. We did partially solve a traffic safety issue for some neighbors in the Caulfield neighborhood and brought to us, but it took some time. But it's an example, a very good example of citizens, the Transportation Advisory Committee, and city staff working together to solve a neighborhood problem. It was actually in the Caulfield neighborhood. And they brought the problem to us. It took 3 TAC meetings, a traffic study, and a final revision, but we got it done. So we felt real good about that. So our Traffic Advisory Committee is working very well. But we have 2 vacancies. And it's kind of a fun committee, pretty good group of people. So if any of you desire to get involved in that committee, we do have the vacancies, or if you think you know of anybody, just have them contact me, and then I'll make arrangements for an interview with the committee. Thank you.
Great.
Then there's also the UGB member.
Oh, yes. We also recommended to the City Council that we have another member be put on the TAC, and that member would be outside of the city limits, but within the urban growth boundary. So we thought that there might be some good input from. So if you have anybody that you know that might be interested that fits in that category, then we're looking for volunteers for that. Thank you, Damon.
Well, this is just excellent. We are moving right along. We are now at roundtable.
And right before that, I'm sorry, can I make just one comment about
Yes.
the, just to clarify, so from now on, all of the committee reports that are submitted will be attached to the agenda. So when you receive your agenda by email, there's links on your agenda. There's the minutes links, there's other links, and I send them to you separately, Kathy. So you actually receive them not through this link. But anyways, there are links there. So you need to go to those and make sure you check all the links to see what other attachments there are. The minutes are attached by the link as well, even though I do send them to you separately.
And as I mentioned, I guess it was last meeting when I introduced the written report procedure, is that it does save time in our meetings, which tend to run long. And I think it's amazing. Here it is. It's just slightly after 9, and we had a very long presentation period, so this is great. Let's start roundtable, and I want to start over here. Kathy Ann. Carrie Ann. Excuse me. Mary Ann. Well, let's see. Maybe her name is Susie. I don't know.
It is Mary Ann.
Thank you.
South End Neighborhood Association, our next meeting is in August, and it's our annual picnic at Chapin Park, so please come. And that's on the 3rd Thursday, which I think is the 16th. And we're still planning it, so it'll be exciting, though, so please come.
I'll let the boss do the talking. Well, Rivercrest Neighborhood Association got insurance, so we are on our own, I suppose, now, and we do have a meeting place again. The church has accepted us now that we gave them the little certificate. So we do have a meeting place. It's at the First Presbyterian Church. We've had them there forever. So at least now we're secure with a building site.
Good.
So.
Great progress.
Yeah. Remind them of our August. Oh yeah, we have our neighborhood picnic dessert potluck we've had for 20 years, and we always had it on the first Tuesday of August. And the neighborhood association decided that they didn't want to be a part of the National Night Out. They wanted to keep our neighborhood picnic neighborhood. So we moved ours to this week. This time it will be the 2nd Tuesday in August, which will be the 16th.
Yeah.
And it's at Rivercrest Park. Everybody brings their favorite dessert, and we supply hot dogs and condiments and pop. And it's just a really nice neighborhood. And I'm not sure what the reasoning was, but we took a vote, and consensus was they just wanted to be.
We have our parade.
Oh, yeah, we had a little parade, a bicycle parade, that's right.
We had a lot of fun.
Well, it's more intimate when it's
I
kind of
guess
your
that's
family.
it. And Rivercrest, it's kind of a, I can't describe it. Unless there's a real burning issue like, and I can't remember what.
Cell towers.
Yeah, oh yeah, cell towers. You know, there's just no real big interest, but the picnic brings everybody. Everybody comes to the picnic.
Everybody likes to eat.
Yeah.
Thank you. Faith? No?
I don't have anything unless Steve wants to share something from our
Okay, well, we'll go to Tony then.
Berkeley Hills Neighborhood Association meeting for the 9th of which is next week, and you know, trying to get the neighborhood together, hopefully plan something like a summer picnic at the park, and see, you know, try to get a vote going on what we want to do about it. A few neighbors have expressed interest, but hopefully with the meeting we'll get a lot more people that will have everything all set up. So
okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first thing, I meant to do this earlier, but I'm going to do it now. I have a correction. The first city celebration, Tony came back in to let me know it is July 27th. He kept saying August, and he meant to say July.
Okay.
So the first city celebration is actually July 27th.
Okay.
So if we could make that correction. And then I have invitations here for all of our volunteers. We do a volunteer the concerts in the park, and we celebrate with a dinner for all of our volunteers. So I think you have to bring this
sticker.
The sticker, and this is your official invitation. So please take one and pass it on. I'll come back around to get you guys. And that's all I have.
Okay, Brian?
The Two Rivers Association will have its first official meeting since forming on July 24th at the River Shore Hotel, and we'll be revamping the bylaws a little bit, getting a presentation on the cove from the developers, and a few other things. We have a couple of developers that have popped up that need to come before us, so they appear to be coming to that meeting. So
great.
What
we'll
time
be
is
busy.
that? What time is your meeting?
It'll probably be 7.
7-ish?
Yeah.
July 24th?
What time's the dessert in Rivercrest?
Beg your pardon?
What time's your
Oh, 6:30.
6:30?
You can eat till 8.
That's assuming it lasts that
Unless you
long.
want to be in bicycle pride.
Steve.
Thank you, Alice. Hillendale Neighborhood Association, we're having our quarterly meeting tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. at the Living Hope Church, which is on Myers Road at the intersection with Gaffney Lane. Starts at 7 p.m. We have a very full agenda. We have 3 guest speakers, one being Suze Moss from the Oregon City Community Ed, Chief Jim Band, our new police chief, and Laura Turway from Oregon City Planning Department, who will be introducing an update to the sign regulations. So all 3 of these guest speakers will have something very interesting to tell us. Again, that's tomorrow evening, 7 p.m., Living Hope Church on Myers Road. And I again want to encourage everyone to mark their calendars for Tuesday, August 6th. That's the Oregon City Citywide National Night Out. It's in Chapin Park. And it'll be lots of good entertainment, lots of good information being shared, and a lot of fun. So, y'all come.
And get there early if you want to eat, because they pass out tickets.
That's right.
And they do the first 200 people.
Yeah.
And last time, coming 20 minutes late, there were no more tickets left.
Be on time.
Yep.
That was August 6th at what time?
5:30 p.m.
Ingra?
From last Friday, the South End Neighborhood Association Steering Committee met, and we had a presentation from people who want to build a 32-bed memory care home on the corner of South End Road and Amanda Court. And so that was interesting to hear, and it will be going through the Planning Commission. But they did come and show us the plans. and Mary Ann told us about the rest.
Gaffney Lane has moved its July meeting because I will be out of town. And so we will be meeting on Thursday, August 1st at 7 o'clock at the Meadows Courtyard. And they always make homemade goodies for us and provide a really nice place. We will, at this point I know that Laura will be there talking about the code changes. I'm not sure what else we'll have, but we have moved our meeting.
I'll let Damon report on McLaughlin neighborhood. Mike?
I don't really have anything. There's a bobcat and it's kind of serious. There's a cougar or bobcat, and apparently from its method of operation, you can tell what kind of animal. But it did take it took my girlfriend Terry's cat, and I put it on Facebook, and somebody else's cat up by McLaughlin Grade School. It left the same MO with that cat, and so I must be working maybe the Coffee Creek little drainage from South End and down, and so if you're in those areas, watch your kittens. I think that's all I really have.
Tom?
Yes, the Hazel Grove Wrestling Farms will be meeting on July 18th at the Oregon City Methodist Church, beginning at 7 p.m. We're going to continue our emergency preparedness theme for this year. We have a video that we're going to be sharing with the people regarding mapping your neighborhood. Also, Laura Teraway is going to be coming and giving us the preliminaries on the revision of the sign code and asking for citizen involvement in that process. It's been quite some time since the city's sign code was updated, and to be perfectly honest with you, code enforcement determined several years ago that they did not want to enforce something that they felt was unenforceable, and so signages everywhere, every kind, anyone wants to put a sign up, you can put it up. I'll put one up in my yard one of these days. So it really needs to be looked at. We're going to have an update on what's going on with the Filbert Run Park. And we have had, shortly after school let out, a number of acts of vandalism in our neighborhood. That's very unusual for our particular neighborhood. And I was glad to hear Mike's report about the cats, because we did have a woman came around last week and said that, have you seen my cat? And described it, and no one has seen it. But it's not far from McLaughlin Grade School, which you mentioned. So I will try to share that with that neighbor. Thank you.
Yes, and actually I forgot to talk to Tom. I went for a walk in our neighborhood, and somebody's using a tree with a nail in it to put a sign up for garage sales. 2 trees. So I think there does need to be something somewhere around that this isn't appropriate, because we'll look like Hawthorne with a bunch of nails and the telephone poles and stuff. And Feel the Stock and Feel the Heart moved from one place to another within the Safeway area, and we're set up. We're going to get at least this year the socks done.
Excellent.
So that doesn't mean we are not looking for a very more permanent place. So if anybody knows of one.
Last time you spoke, you were homeless. Now you're not.
No, we aren't. But it's like we could get 2 weeks' notice because that gets rented. So hopefully, we're going to be working like the Dickens did. Get it all boxed up, and I think we're able to store it at one of the schools that boxed that stuff till the end of the year or for a year. But we want a permanent home, somebody to adopt us. Bill Gates would be nice, Nike would be nice, but thank you.
Paul?
Kenema Neighborhood Association is much like Rivercrest in the sense we like to have our own picnic and and this has always been a time when our neighborhood kind of comes together and just breaks bread, and we find that to be very comforting. We've done it on National Night Out in direct conflict, and I'm interested that you've decided to move to the next week to try to eliminate that conflict, and I might propose that with Howard Post to see if we we can do something similar to that. But it's always been, this has been probably one of the better things when we get together as a neighborhood, just in our picnic. We've had multiple sightings of a cougar or cougars along the Kenema Cemetery Road, and one of them was done by a very sage gentleman that knows a lot. And he identified a very long, curly tail going up like this and said that was no cat. So, anyway, yeah, we're reminded that we are close to the wilderness, and so we got to be careful with all of our cats and dogs and everything. So, but we've had some damage too at the Kenema Children's Park of significance, and
when did it open officially?
It's been open, but it's most of the damage has been to the sprinkler systems, where they've kicked off the heads of them or stolen them, damaged them. So the sprinkler system for the park is disabled, and then they've gone in and done major damage into the restroom. And when you have somebody come back and repair that after the fact, it's very, very costly to the city. And so we tried to put the word out. We went around to all of the immediate neighbors around the park to kind of watch, to do our own neighborhood watch, to see if we could try to watch and see who the people are. But we've tried to get arm up our people to be and watch. And it's because we have an attractive basketball court, I think, that these people come in, and it's become a little magnet to them. But so I've gone in a couple times just to, when I see a bunch of what I call tweens, and that seem to be, and talk to them and said, you know, some really bad people are in here doing damage. and try to, you know, pass the word that the neighborhood doesn't accept this. But anyway, anybody have any good ideas? The best thing I know of is just for all of us to be good stewards of the assets that we have here, and make sure that we don't allow any of this. It's like graffiti. You just can't allow it to get started. You got to kind of stomp it out quick.
Okay, thank you. Bob?
The next Park Place Steering Committee meeting is August 19th, and in May we elected all new officers. So, and they are myself as the chair, and Barbara here as our vice chair. Her husband Ray is the new treasurer, and Tom Guile is Ray is the secretary, excuse me, and Tom Guile is our treasurer. Some of you may know about him. So we couldn't keep him out.
You trust him with the money?
And I was remiss at our last meeting, and would like to thank Steve Van Haverbeek for his years of representation on the CIC for Park Place. Thank you.
Barbara?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Damon?
The next McLaughlin Neighborhood Association meeting would normally be on a Thursday, but concerts in the park are starting. So our meeting was been moved up one day, well actually 2 days, because 4th of July would be our first meeting. So so our meeting will be Wednesday the 10th. Those of you that are listening and would show up at the fire station and wonder why nobody's answering the door, it's because you're a day late. So just go over to the concert and buy a snow cone instead. And we will have our booth up at the concert, so come on by. Apparently they're not going to have the Italian ice thing, so but there's some other vendor coming by, so we'll just have to, run them out of town. But anyway, that is our major fundraiser. That's what lets us get things done, and they're good. So looking forward to seeing you at the concerts.
All right, we are done at 9:20. Thank you very much, everybody. And don't forget your bylaws on your way out.